We start this week with what we've chosen as the number 5 story of 2019 based on general consensus and just how much we've talked about the issue this year on the show. And that story is the groundbreaking creation of the state's first ethics commission. Voters overwhelmingly approved the idea in 2018. The commission is charged with overseeing complaints of government misconduct, ranging from campaign financing to lobbying and other ethics violations. So joining us again this week to talk about the year that was, talented group of local journalists, starting with Gwyneth Dolan, a frequent contributor here at New Mexico in Focus and an adjunct professor of communication and journalism at UNM. Welcome back. Next up, Jessica Onchuras. She's the news director for the USA Today's Southeast New Mexico properties. That's the Carlsbad Current-Argus, Alamogordo Daily News, and Ruidoso News. You are so busy. Also with us is Andy Lyman. He's staff writer for the New Mexico Political Report and a frequent guest here and a familiar face at the table. One of the state's newest retirees. I'm talking about Steve Terrell, former Capitol reporter at the Santa Fe New Mexican. Welcome to you too. Now, all of the appointees have been made to the Ethics Commission. We have an executive director who was hired in September. Steve, start with you. Why did it take so long? Simple question here. Why did it take so long to get to this point? People have been asking for this for a decade. What took so long?
Heather Ferguson from Common Cause and Vicki Harrison say actually it goes back to the 70s when it goes like 30 years. It took long. One thing about the legislature, they don't like giving up any power. They don't like policing themselves. So there was a big reluctance, but there's so many cases starting back about 2005 when the state treasurer and his predecessor were both arrested and later did prison time, and you know, it just never stopped. We had in recent years Phil Griego, a Democratic senator from around Santa Fe, and Diana Duran, a Republican Secretary of State. I think it's got to where, you know, it's okay, let's just work out the details. I remember I went all the way to conference committee with the year it passed, and as everyone knew it would, once it went to the voters, they approved it. So that's why it took so long. It's just there wasn't they said, well, this isn't us. We can police ourselves. And then Manny Aragon goes to prison back a few years ago. And
that's right.
So it
changed a lot of things, didn't it? The Manny Aragon thing, yeah.
Yeah, really, but still, it took 5 or 6 years
that's
after that.
If not a little more, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You know, Jessica, interestingly, I'm curious what you guys think about the commission. I'll start with you, but the makeup of it. We've got appointees from the governor, as we know, in both political parties, as we would imagine. But also includes some names that are fairly trusted around here. Former Deputy Attorney General Stuart Bluestone. A lot of folks know him. And, of course, former Governor Gary Carruthers. Your comfort level with the makeup of the commission as it stands now, how do you see this?
You know, I think it's a really great group. We've got, as you said, names that people know, but I think the important part of that is that names that people trust. New Mexicans are looking for a reason to trust again, and if this is the path towards that, I think we've got a really great starting.
Andy, same question. You can add on to that too, but then also layer on, if you'd like to, the public, I'm going to ask this of you, Gwyneth, as well, the public expectation here. So the makeup of the commission, we seem to have connected all the dots here. Is it good enough for the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jessica's point about trust is a big thing. Trust and knowledge that if the general public can trust that these people know what they're talking about, that they know where the baseline that they're looking at, what is ethics, what are we trying to, you know, what do we take on, what do we not take on, and to have, I know it sounds silly to say former politicians that are on this, but they kind of know how things go, right? They might be able to see something that comes in and go, this is definitely frivolous, and we're going to just, you know, move it on, whatever.
Yeah. How do you sense the transparency issue when it comes to this? That's a very tricky thing to thread that needle, because there's at certain points in an investigation, you got to be quiet about it, kind of figure it out. But then there's other parts the public would have an expectation, it would seem to me, to hear what's going on here. How to balance that's going to be
part of that was what Steve was talking about too, is the reluctance to pass this, is that lawmakers, I mean, over and over and over again we heard this is going to be used as a weapon in our campaigns, right? They're going to file a complaint against us, and then it's going to be public. I personally think that it probably just needs to all be out there. We need to see it happen as it goes along. So.
I think I know where you're at, Gwyneth, on the transparency issue. What Andy just said, would you prefer to see everything from stem to stern on an investigation?
Yeah, I'm on record as advocating for that when I was with the Foundation for Open Government, but
I was your intern.
That's right.
Reunited. I think the thing is that when we're talking about a hypothetical ethics commission, paranoia reigns still. Oh, well, who are these people going to be and blah, blah, blah. But when you put actual faces onto these people, then I think it's a different calculation because people are like, oh, well, yeah, Gary Carruthers is pretty cool, or I know Ron Solomon, I was on a committee with him, or, Stuart Bluestone, I saw him do, legislators are very comfortable with him. I think there are enough people on the list that real humans can connect to so that now it seems like, oh, well, these people seem like they might do an okay job. It's not this mythical people who are in on the deal, who are going to railroad, or ignore everything or whatever. So.
Right. That feeling from the public, are they popular? Are they there because they're popular and familiar, or are they there to do a job for us as taxpayers? You know what I mean? That's a tricky thing to kind of get across. I want to stay with you on this next question, though. What questions are still sort of out there about how they're going to function? Have you heard anything out there that folks are still a little squirrely on about how this all is going to go?
Yeah, all of it, I think.
Right.
I think the important thing is that people know.
Actually, that's a serious point. We don't know, do we?
No. But the important thing is now people have a place to go.
Yeah.
When you have a problem, if you see something, you can say something, right? You can report it, and you, I think, now have a feeling that there are some people of integrity on this thing. The executive director has a really great profile. He was college roommates with Pete Buttigieg, but also clerked for Chief Justice Nakamura, who's a Republican, and worked for a liberal law firm in Albuquerque. I think he's got a lot of across-the-board cred. People will hopefully feel more comfortable in submitting complaints, and then how they're going to work through them, I'd be really interested to see.
Right, exactly. Who's overseeing all this at the end of the day? I mean, obviously the people are. That's the easy first answer. But who's in charge of this thing necessarily to make sure this thing's going on the right track?
The executive director? The commissioners themselves. Yeah, it's an independent agency. I suppose they could be impeached like others. I'm not familiar with the actual procedures. We're not going to know how it's really going to work until the first big scandal comes along.
Do we have a sense of who's going to be filing complaints? Is this more of a lobbyist complaints channel, sexual harassment channel? Like any sense of that?
It can be either of those. Or if you get wind that so-and-so, hey, he voted for this and he got everybody else to vote for this, and then he has a financial interest in it.
Right.
They can be just regular whistleblowers who happen to know something.
Let's say someone, I don't know, bought a building maybe. And
right. Can't happen here.
Oh, no. Maybe got a state road to move around some property. That would never happen. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways this could go, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I suppose it could be just anybody who. I don't think it's all going to be lobbyists reporting, because lobbyists know where their bread is buttered. But,
Jessica, I'm wondering if one of the first, that term low-hanging fruit is so juicy sometimes, but we're talking about these secret settlements.
Yes.
And that would seem to me, if the public wanted to get at something pretty quickly, this commission has exactly right.
So when we're talking about transparency, and we're not really sure, what this commission can do, where their powers lie, how broad of a stroke they can paint with this, but that's definitely, as you said, a low-hanging fruit. When we're talking about secret settlement, something done outside of the public eye, who's to say that there's not a question mark still there? And I think there are many instances like that, and we're not necessarily talking large state scandal, very public politician, but we're talking about our matters that matter to the public and to the taxpayer.
And obviously, Andy, as I follow up what Jessica says, that has to have a feedback loop, a very vigorous feedback loop. And again, someone has to manage that, someone has to create that, someone has to encourage that. I mean, the whole thing, it's not just a standalone group doing this on their own. We all have to be sort of in this process, it would seem to me.
Yeah, I think that's valid questions of who's going to be in charge of this, who's going to be kind of running the show besides the executive director, who's going to hold them accountable, right? They're holding other people accountable. How do we know that they're actually going through with what we are paying them to do?
Let's see how that goes. Do you have a last thought on that?
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
All right.
I mean,
I saw your eye move there. I thought you might have had a thought there. Okay.
But I was going to say, so many of us reporters have been covering all of these issues that led up to these scandals, and then we covered the commission. We're still here, and we're still going to be following everything the commission does, and trying to engage the public in oversight too.
That's who's going to be watching over this thing. You're exactly right. Moving on now to our fourth biggest story of the year, and this one generated a lot of discussion here at the Roundhouse this legislative session. I'm talking about cannabis. both recreational and medical. Andy, I'm going to go to you first, of course. You covered this issue a lot in your work for the Political Report. What issue tops your list for 2019? Aggressive move towards outright legalization, getting medical right. What was the dominant story in 2019?
For my world, it was the Senate Bill 406. I called it the Omnibus Cannabis Bill, and it just had so many different things in it. Even coming up before, no, I think it's going to be in January, they're going to look at consumption lounges. That was in the bill, or consumption areas.
Right.
Reciprocal patients, so people can come in, and of course, along with that, there was a whole snafu with now people from out of state can come in and get a card whether they live here or not.
Right.
There was a whole lot of protections that were into it. So that Senate Bill 406, which also included protections for children using it at school, not getting your kids taken away by CYFD if they find out you're a patient. All those things. So I think that was the big sort of defining thing in cannabis.
Can I throw in work issues as well on that? Do we have any more clarity about that? I mean,
yeah. So the interesting thing about that is I just wrote a story about this that the state announced a rapid hire event, and they said come get a job. Well, as it turns out, just like many other jobs, you have to get drug tested if you drive a truck, if you drive mechanical equipment. And of course, with cannabis, you get into a weird situation where you could test positive for it, but you're not necessarily impaired at that moment. So that is sort of the same thing that's happening in the private industry. I think there's a lot of people that think, oh, great, I'm protected, but then a private company can say, well, I have federal money coming in, or it's a safety issue. And so, I mean, there's protections there. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how you'd go any farther than what we are right now.
Good point there. You know, Gwyneth, we have the much ballyhooed task force the governor put together to go around the state and talk about recreational issues. There was a series of meetings. I wish they had live streamed them, but that's just me. You know, it's just, what was your general sense about how that went, that road show?
Well, I think it's really important to engage regular people on issues like this, because it's easy to say, hey, we should legalize weed. That's a lot of money. Let's cash in. Sounds great, you know. Or to say, absolutely not, I have no interest in it. But it's these issues that Andy's been talking about and reporting on that really matter to a lot of people who have epileptic kids. And the hassle that they go through. I have friends who have to do this, driving to school and pulling them in and out. People who do use it, you know, for medical purposes, and then, you know, also have these jobs. All of these little details are really important for regular folks to bring these things up. So I'm a fan of the roadshow.
When the roadshow came to your area, how was it received? What happened there?
So the key point, I think, is to understand who makes up our area, right? We're talking about a lot of veterans in our community. We're talking about people who are in already the retirement age and above and are looking for these alternative medical practices. So it was one of those moments when you really sit back and you try to engage with what the education of the public is. What are they being told about the entire issue? Yes, we're going to get millions of dollars if we do it recreationally, but how can we secure the system that we have now?
Interesting point there. I want to come back to medical here in a quick second. But Steve, we had all kinds of other things, administration in schools we talked about. But plant limits was interesting as well. We had a weird year in 2019.
Right, they
raised
plant
limits. Right.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know they increased it
1750.
significantly.
I bet a person at this table knows the number. That's right.
All right. So yeah, that was a welcome thing. You know, when Susana Martinez was elected, I talked to her personally about this during the campaign. She was against the medical marijuana program, which had just started. By the time she was elected and took office, she changed her tune on, I'm not going to go after I'm not going to abolish this, but a lot of her critics say that she, you know, kind of let it die. That was not a priority for her, and it's like, well, you're lucky I didn't abolish it. Now we have a governor who's very, well, she helped implement the program back when she was health secretary, and she's for legalizing recreational marijuana, which is a big switch. I don't think it's going to happen this next year. A lot of people say, oh yeah, this is a year, or 2020 is a year. Again, going on a limb with, and I've made bad predictions before, but I still don't think they have the votes to legalize it.
Is there one particular issue that are behind those no votes in your view? Is there one thing that just hasn't been cleared up enough for some of those no folks?
Not really.
What about a presidential
driving.
election in 2020?
Yeah, well, there you go. That's right.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah.
I think there are still questions and legitimate questions about driving. There's no breathalyzer tests yet. I hear some are under development, but who knows how reliable they are right now. So I think that's still the big thing. But I think a lot of people just don't want to legalize it. They don't like people who smoke it, and they don't like they don't want it legal.
It's just a non-starter completely for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Interesting point there, Andy. Do pick up on the plant thing if you want to. But then also, what's interesting to me with this is the idea that if it is legal, how do we get to that place? If we do get the vote, how do we get to that place that answers all those different safety questions, that satisfies law enforcement, that satisfies the feds?
I'm
it's
kind of
going to be hard.
Steve. I'm sort of pessimistic that, or not, shouldn't say pessimistic. I don't think it will pass this year.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunities for it to not happen. Not just the votes, but the governor is asking for something pretty specific. She wants a comprehensive bill that addresses public safety, and there's going to be a lot of debate on where that money goes. There's only so much money you can get out of this.
It's a 30-day session.
Yeah, and so I think that even if it gets to her desk, it could be a very, not disastrous bill, but opposite of what she was looking for, and it still wouldn't happen there. So
I want to stay with you on this question too. My sense of it, when I glean from other folks who are advocates for legalization, is they were very concerned with the roadshow had a little too much industry and a little too much conflict of interest in some of the makeup about it. Might that come back and be a problem when it's time to discuss this in the legislature?
It might. I think we'll probably see a lot more lobbyists nationally coming in.
Okay.
Although some of the proposals that they came up with would sort of eliminate outside interests. I think there's a concern that big cannabis would come in and open a shop, and there's companies that do this across the country. They just swoop in, and I think right now what they want to do is make it so that you have to be involved in the medical program as well. So that would sort of eliminate this outside interest coming in, that you have to be able to have enough plants to support the medical program as well as sell recreational.
I see. Interesting little twist there. That's got a minute left, Gwyneth, and I'm just interested the financial implications. I understand how you set this up. It's not just a barrel of money that's going to show up just because we open the doors, but the opportunity is interesting. You look at Michigan just opened for business, tons of dough. Massachusetts, all these states when they open recreational, no one has failed yet. Not one state has failed, and all of them are outstripping what they thought they were going to get for money. Can't we just expect the same? That we're going to be rolling in it once it starts?
Lou Wallace would tell you no. You can't expect those same things to happen here the same way. I mean, I think, you called it a barrel of money, and it's interesting because if you compare it to the barrels of oil and gas that we've got here, say we put gas in the barrels, it's a much smaller piece of money, right? We don't really want to reject major sources of income here. But I don't think we can count on it being a miracle for the state budget. If this does happen, and my money's on it not happening in a 30-day session where everybody's thinking about how that vote's going to play in a campaign ad a few months later. But I think if it does happen, I think New Mexico will proceed sort of cautiously as it has, and I think they have been looking at what other states have done. And if it does bring in money and help us diversify the state's revenue stream, great.
Interesting points. We're just getting going on our countdown to the top 5 stories of the year. Stick around to find out what topped the list here with our special all-journalists line table.